Hey, let's talk Gillette. Welcome to a special episode of Let's Talk Gillette. The topic for today is the comprehensive plan that the city is currently working through. We hired a consultant, Verdunity, to help us through the plan. AJ and Katherine are joining me today to discuss that plan and where we are at currently with it. So I'm going to start with you, AJ. Introduce yourself a little bit and what you do for Verdunity.
Sure. So again, yes, my name is AJ Fawver. I am leading our community consulting program at Verdunity. We do planning for communities all over the United States. We are housed primarily in Texas, but obviously we do work in places like Wyoming, Oklahoma, Colorado, other states. And our goal is to come in and help communities get clarity, cast a vision for their future, and then put together a plan of action as to how to achieve that vision. And so that's what we've been brought in to do with the city of Gillette.
How about yourself, Katherine? Introduce yourself a little bit and what you do as a community cultivator.
My name is Katherine Linares. I am with Verdunity. I am the lead planner for Gillette's comprehensive plan. As a community cultivator, I assist with creating the various elements of the plan, as well as help organize and coordinate the community engagements that the plan encompasses, so it informs the plan as well, so the community can see themselves reflected in the final product.
So this is something that we started back, I believe in October was kind of the kickoff. And we have had the city staff sit down with us and talk a little bit about what a comprehensive plan is from their standpoint. But I guess kind of a first question, what is a comprehensive plan?
So a comprehensive plan is really the plan of action for the community. It is their playbook, is how we refer to it loosely. And so there are a number of components that are critical across comprehensive plans. One of those is, of course, to have a vision for what the community's future should look like. And we can stop there, but those visions are not usually realized. So there has to be an element of tying that vision to actions that the community can take. And our approach at Verdunity to comprehensive planning is a little off the beaten path. We, number one, are fiscally focused in our comprehensive plans. So we help communities understand the kinds of development patterns and actions they can take that will help them get more out of their assets. In this case, the asset of land, the asset of the city's coffers. What are the things that over time will achieve a net benefit for the city? And then a second component of our plans that's a little off the beaten path is we believe in really community-focused implementation. And so what that means is that it's not just the city of Gillette's job to put this plan in motion. They are one of the major players, but it really, in order for it to be successful, has to include the community as a whole, local organizations and residents who are passionate about their community, other partners and agencies that are present in the community. It really has to be a community-wide effort for the plan to really have staying power. And so that's another hallmark of the way that we approach these. The plan looks at existing conditions as well as the future. And the last chapter of the plan is really the most important one. It essentially outlines the scope of work for the city and all of those community partners that I just talked about over the next 5 to 7 years. So it really is casting a very broad vision and then putting things into place to make that vision executable.
So why should people, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit there of why people should care about the comp plan, but maybe talk a little more detail as to why this is so important for the community.
Yeah, I'll start on this, and then I think Katherine may have some things to add. One of the biggest frustrations that people have in cities across the United States right now is that they feel that there's not adequate transparency about how their local governments are selecting projects and funding them. They don't necessarily understand why policy is put together the way it is, what the regulations are trying to achieve, and why they're there. And so in order to form a tighter connection between the community and local governments, there has to be a place that people can go to understand the ideas and the principles that are informing all of these efforts. The comprehensive plan is that place. So whether you're new to Gillette or you're someone that's lived here your entire life, at the end of this process, you'll have a resource that you can go to and you can see what the community is going to be focused on and how they're going to be achieving this vision and understanding how you can play a role in it. So it's both informative, it's also an educational tool, it's also an ability for people to see whether they maybe have a business business or they have a nonprofit organization, how they can factor into that, how they can also benefit. So it's really trying to break down the silos sometimes exist between the community as a whole and their local governments, so that there is that transparency that they so desire.
I would also say that the reason why people should care about the comprehensive plan is kind of how AJ said, cities are always making decisions. Sometimes you won't realize the impacts of those decisions until years later. So this is a great opportunity for the community to get involved, for them to understand, okay, this is how housing is determined. This is how the different types of commercial, where they're located, things of that nature are also determined, and to create the community that they truly want. So if they want certain aspects such as great streetscape, walkability, things of that nature, a comp plan is the foundation to start that. So then in the upcoming years, the 5 to 7 years, smaller decisions and incremental decisions can be made to try to achieve those goals.
So how does the comp plan then affect those decisions, whether it's the city or the community, I guess, or members of the community?
So on the community side, giving as much input as possible. That is something that really informs the comprehensive plan, because a comprehensive plan is for them. At the end of the day, they will feel the effects. They will actually live in a city that is reflected upon the comprehensive plan. So giving us as much feedback as possible. We do try to engage the community through virtual activity rooms, in-person events, such as what we're doing on this trip, as well as in a later phase, we will be putting out the entire document for them to read and give us feedback in. Another way for them to give us input is through city staff, city council. What they hear is then passed on to us as well. So comprehensive plans on the city side are used for decision making, as we have previously mentioned, in regards to development, but also a comprehensive plan can go a little bit more broader. Mobility in regards to how streets should be designed or how they can be designed. Also the types of open spaces that are available throughout the community, as well as even just budget items. Some things have to take priority over others, and the comprehensive plan does also assist with that.
Yeah, I would add to that and just say, in terms of impact, some things that relate to that are, there's so many decisions that are being made in local governance, from policy decisions to budgetary decisions, construction projects, the allowance of different types of development and redevelopment. There's a lot of moving parts, and without coordination, those moving parts can actually be more costly. There's a way that you can bring everything back to a central set of principles for decision making, and again, that central vision. And so while people that are not super involved in comprehensive planning efforts may look at them and say, well, that's just dreaming for the future. It's actually grounded in much more than that. It's really grounded in this idea of fiscal sustainability and this idea of efficiency, and making sure that those moving parts are choreographed in such a way where the city gets the most bang for their buck, so to speak. And I think most residents at their core believe that that's something that's necessary. We've also heard very loud and clear from the Gillette community this far into the project that they really desire to understand more about why and how decisions are made in local government. And so one of the biggest impacts that I think that can have those long-reaching, effects on people now and years into the future is opening up those dialogues about why those things are happening. Most people truly can accept decisions if they can see that there was a process by which that decision was reached, and they can see that the best interests of the community were factored into that. Making that very clear and doing that very openly is something that this plan helps set up the local decision makers, both elected, appointed, and those on staff, to do better. And so I think the community, in going through this process and helping guide the document, is actually helping guide the way that those decisions are made and communicated in the future, which is honestly one of the biggest points of contention usually.
So none of us have a crystal ball, but the comp plan purpose is to help prepare and give us a guide for the future. But how can the future be prepared for?
Yeah, that's a great question. And if COVID taught us anything, it taught us that we can't see the future clearly, correct? So it definitely is a daunting task, but number one, there's a great deal that you can anticipate about the future of the community by looking at its past and looking at the different patterns that have taken place over time. So that is a part of this. We are in the second phase of this process right now. We've done a massive amount of data collection, and we've learned a lot about the decisions that have been made in the past, the reasons behind those decisions, how they worked well or maybe didn't work so well. So that's one clue that's really helpful when you're trying to then project forward. Another piece that's really helpful is understanding the direction the community is going in terms of the markets, in terms of housing specifically, the different needs that are there in the community, and then trying to anticipate and plan for the ways to actually get at solving those problems. So that's a second element that I think is really important. And then the third thing I'd say that makes it really possible to plan for the future is having this dialogue that we've talked about with the community. That's the best place to start. So while the future can be uncertain in different areas, one thing that we do know from our work with communities over several years is that those pockets of consensus that rise to the surface throughout these conversations, focusing on those first is going to have the highest likelihood of success, and it has the highest level of certainty for the future. So that's what I would say.
I would say that cities they're always growing. They're never fully adults in a manner of speaking. So really understanding who and what a city wants to be when they grow up, it helps us help them plan for the future, who they want to bring into the community, who they want to nourish within the community, how they want to grow in regards to their local economy, their attractions, all those things that make up a city. By figuring out what they want, that from there what guides the comprehensive plan to then help them plan for the future.
And I would just add one thing about this. We're talking about the plan itself, but when we're talking about the future, one of the most important messages that I hope people will take away if they're listening to this is the plan is just the first part. You can have the best, most attractive, well-written plan in the world, but the execution of the plan is also the other half of this. And so if you're listening to this, I think often people have a love for their communities. After all, you've chosen to live and work here. And I think most people truly want to help their community, but they don't know where to plug in, and they don't know where to start or how to help. And so that's another thing that we are hoping to have come out of the end of this plan is some clues for the city government, the county government, other agencies, where they can take those people that are so passionate about Gillette and plug them into places where they can help the execution of the plan, because ultimately success begets success. And so that's really important, I think, for a takeaway for people as they think about the future.
What makes Verdunity qualify to work with city staff in creating the comp plan?
I think there's a few things. I mentioned earlier in the episode our focus on fiscally based planning, and I think that's one of the biggest areas where we shine. I worked in city government for many years and knew that I wanted to go into consulting, but knew that it had to be the right fit, and this was the right fit for me because I truly believe that all of the decisions that we make as a city staff member or that we assist in have a fiscal impact. It might be felt today and it might not be felt into the future, but things like unintended consequences are important to think about today. So we do that. We actually do the math, and we help cities understand their current fiscal picture, and then we help them understand the types of strategies and plans that they can put into place to maximize that fiscal future. So I think that's one area where we're very different. I think another area that I just touched on, both Katherine and myself have a history in working in municipal government as staff members. We've worked with councils, we've worked with commissions, we've worked with citizen volunteers. So we understand the frustrations of staff members that, let's be honest, get into city government not for the money, but because there's an altruistic bend, right? You believe in helping communities, you want to affect positively the people around you. But that can be very difficult, and frankly, without the right tools in place, it's very much an uphill climb for people in those positions to really do their jobs effectively. And so we use the experience that we gained working on that side of the fence to see the barriers that often crop up, and we have the luxury of being able to make observations and point things out and say things sometimes that people in positions that are elected and appointed may not be able to articulate, or they may not see it. An outside perspective sometimes can pick up on things that go unnoticed within the community itself. So I think that's another area where we shine, is that we've been there and we have done that hard work. And so we are well positioned to help the people that are trying to do this important work be more successful in the long run.
Anything else you'd like to add, Katherine?
Yes, going off the fact that we both have worked in local government before, we know that cities never have enough resources, whether that be money, time, etc. So another approach that, and AJ mentioned this a little bit earlier, is we truly try to maximize the assets of the city. So we try to join projects that make sense with one another. We try to really connect the different departments so they can work together more effectively in order to implement the strategies that are recommended, but also we work to connect the community and the different assets. Local partnerships are like an amazing, beautiful thing that at times they forget to communicate with themselves. They know what's going on, but they don't oftentimes realize if they pull in their resources together, they can make even a greater impact on their community that they so love. So that is one way that Verdunity really helps communities across the nation.
That's a great point. We've both been on the receiving end of consultant products. And I can tell you, we've talked about this before, one of the biggest frustrations for staff and elected and appointed officials is when you bring a consultant in to do a plan, and the plan is, guess what? There's these huge boondoggle projects that you've got to pull off, and you've got to go find all of this funding to do it. You need more people, and you need all of these other things that you can't necessarily put into motion. And so our plans are more granular than that. We focus on incremental steps that you can start right away. You don't need more money, you don't need more staff. We try to focus on what is within reach. So our planning is a little bit of planning with constraints. We feel it's unfair to sometimes ask people, what do you want of your community without constraints? Because that ignores the very real realities of local governance. And so we try to take a little different approach of understanding where those limitations are and then working within those limitations.
So, like I said, this plan got kicked off, I believe it was last October, 2023. So where are we at in the plan currently?
So we're currently in phase 2. That phase is going to wrap up in June, and this phase has been largely focused on looking at different scenarios for what the future could look like in terms of land use. We're going to be talking about that today and tomorrow with several different groups within Gillette. Phase 3 runs from June into October, and at that point we'll really start preparing a lot of the map components, the graphic components, and the text components of the plan draft itself. Phase 4 runs from November into the beginning of 2025, and that will be working primarily with the community to identify priorities and prioritize those to help put together this plan of action that we talked about that's in the last chapter. And then finally, that will wrap up with adoption occurring in March and April of 2025.
Anything else either of you would like to add?
I think one thing that I would add is just if you're listening and you have frustrations about something that's happening in Gillette, I think sometimes in our world, that frustration can lead to apathy, and the instinct is to pull back. Well, no one's listening. I don't see how they're taking my words and doing something with them, so I'm just not going to participate. And I would urge you, if you feel that way, and I've felt that way in my own community at times, fight that urge, because change doesn't come without dialogue, and dialogue is only meaningful if it is inclusive. And the people that live in this community, that make it function, that pay their taxes, that buy goods and services here, that is a crucial part of the dialogue. And so while you might feel that what you have to say doesn't matter, I assure you that it does. And I assure you that people that have brought us on board to help the City of Gillette want to hear those things. We heard at the outset of this effort that the City Council really wanted to hear and understand how people of this community felt. And so we are here to essentially be your megaphone. So tell us, share with us what you're thinking, share it with your city staff, because nothing changes when we're silent.
AJ and Katherine, thank you for joining me today. I just want to mention there is a website, plangillette.com, where people can find a lot more information and follow along with the process. That's plangillette.com. And once again, AJ and Katherine, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We enjoyed it.
Let's Talk Gillette is a production of Gillette Public Access Television and the City of Gillette. For more information on city operations, visit the city's website, gillettewy.gov, or follow the City of Gillette on Facebook or Instagram.